Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crypto with English. So, if anybody has looked at my current post on LinkedIn and social media, I preface the point to everybody such as this. So, what is really going to make a truly enduring and lasting blockchain and tech industry? I think we have to master more than just mere knowledge of the subject matter. We actually have to master our own health. And whether it's health, physical or mental health, this is all connected to what we do in our everyday lives, whether it is tech or whether it is anything else. So today, I am especially excited to bring a very special guest that can give us a very holistic, comprehensive look to our health, mentally and physically, and how we interact with the complexities of our work and professional life. So, I would like to introduce Dr. Pat Boulogne. She is a physician, she's an author, a coach, entrepreneur. She has helped thousands of clients optimize and improve their health and lifestyles, really to meet the complexities of life. And as in 2021, things are more complex than ever, especially in this tech renaissance that we are experiencing right now. She is also the author of the highly acclaimed book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? You can find it on Amazon. It looks like a really solid read. I'm adding it to my own Christmas list. Dr. Boulogne, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you very much. I love being here, and I love sharing knowledge so that people can make better decisions. And when they make better decisions, they also make better buying decisions. Better decisions like all around in their whole life, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And I do like, yes, continue.
I was going to say it's just really important because we forget about that. We forget about how our health contributes to thinking clearly and having clarity,
Right.
and contributing to common sense for easy.
Right. And I think what's a really important factor is our basic decision making, whether it's impulsive, on the spot, moments where you have to make a decision, or well thought out, planned, calculated decisions. My question to you is this. I'm very concerned about efficiency and optimization. So whether it's the ability to sit in one place and study for long periods of time, or whether it's able to do something physical for long periods of time, I guess maybe a good starting point would be diet. So from your professional observations and experience, describe the current modern situation with our diets, what's right with it and what's wrong with it, and how it maybe plays into the way we think and process information and just kind of operate and make decisions in our everyday lives.
Well, it's pathetic. The American diet, if I always had, even years ago, like 20 years ago, I was telling patients when I was seeing patients in a block and mortar type situation that you have to take supplementation if you're going to eat in America, because so much
Wow.
of the food is in America is lacking nutrients. So that's why, the movement for that, telling you that GMO is okay. Well, there's some evidence that some GMO foods actually leak into a condition called cancer and other chronic illnesses and diseases. So there's things that they are trying to do to make things like, happier for people, easier for people, like margarine. Never put it in your mouth. Trans fats are carcinogenic. Why they still sell it?
Wow.
Don't know. But anybody who's eating it should never, ever, ever use that. Use real ingredients. And that's what's good about our diet, is that we have options for buying organic. And, we want to make sure that we have, we want the good guy. Like I was in a grocery store about, a couple months ago, 3 months ago in the summer, and I was up near Annapolis, and I had two broccolis in my hand. One was organic, one was inorganic. And this woman looks at me. She said, "You look like you're really in deep in thought." And I said, "Well, I was just thinking of an analogy for a broccoli, for these two broccolis." I said, "One's the good guy. He's the one that you should be dating. He's the one that you want to water walk and feed you. And he's going to give you nutrition so you can sleep well, think well, feel better, move better. And this other guy, this broccoli here, is the guy that your lifespan is going to be shortened by hanging out with him, because you're not going to get any sleep. You're not going to get any nutrition. And then you still have to perform at a certain level, which eventually leads to having making mistakes, right? So, we know that, the most, and getting enough sleep. So I talk about 5 pillars of health. And I talk about it in my book, and I also talk about it, individually with people. And that's why it's so important to your question is you got to understand what health is and how those relate to. And the first pillar that we're talking about right now is diet, and nutrition. And it's important to have, good choices, solid choices, things that you like to eat, but that are always nourishing you. If you want to have stamina and you want to have endurance, like having enough protein mixed with the right kind of fats, and
Right.
mixed with the right type of, protein, carbohydrates, fats, that group will give you the endurance that you need to last all day long, so that you can think better, feel better, and move better. And a lot of people ignore that. A lot of people go for fast, easy, simple. And it's hard
Right.
to get those 3 components in the right ratio in order to be able to have that to be sustainable. And then when you don't have that as being sustainable, then your health suffers.
Right. And just for some context, carcinogenic, carcinogen, that effectively means cancer-causing substance. Is that correct?
Right. Absolutely.
So GMO, and I guess you could say GMO-related chemicals,
Hmm.
these essentially would be in the category as tobacco, as I guess you would
Hmm.
say high volumes of red meat, or even alcohol, which is I guess now considered a carcinogen. Is
It
that
is.
correct?
That is,
Right.
and the problem about the meat is not that you necessarily eat it, is how much you're eating of it. So it is not
Right.
bad to
Right.
have a good piece of lean meat. The problem is if you cook it on the grill,
Right.
that process of heating something up to a high temperature creates a chemical configuration that changes in your body, and it starts to become carcinogenic. Like, never eat
Wow.
dark black, something that's charcoal grilled and
Right.
it's really seared. Whether it's in the oven or whether it's outside, on the outside grill.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's definitely good to know. So it seems like steaks is the least.
Well, you just broke up a little bit. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was just saying. So it seems like when it comes to ordering steak, sticking to medium rare would be the much better bet compared to anything higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason for that is, not only the temperature for that is that, when you cook proteins, they become denatured. So, an egg
Oh,
is a
okay.
protein. When you put it in a pan and you cook it, it becomes denatured. And so it becomes solidified.
Wow.
Um, and it's just like it's a mind shift, a paradigm shift about how you think about food. I mean, even if you look at, the oils that people use, people, like, coconut, like, what is it called? Canola oil,
Oh,
is,
canola oil. Yes.
forget about it. It's garbage. Throw it in the
Yeah.
trash.
I've
It's
read
not,
about
it's
that.
not useful. It's not useful for anything that's partially hydrogenated, is not good for you. It has, I just got done doing a seminar over the weekend for license renewal. And I thought it was so interesting because I recently had 5 friends, people, well, I say friends, meaning within my first degree, a separation, tell me that they had cancer. And they didn't have it a year ago. They didn't have signs and symptoms. Their blood markers were all normal. But here they are today, like having, looking at what their treatment options are and like what they need to do. And, and some of them, like one of them, for instance, like there's so many men, right, who are they're traders. There's a lot of women too, but there's a direct relationship I found so interesting was that drinking milk is directly related to the incidence of, or the potential incidence of prostate cancer. And that's
Wow.
like, it seems like to be like the weakest link for men,
Yeah.
for like cancer. So it's like, don't drink milk. I mean,
Ugh.
it doesn't make sense to me. So there's a whole slew of, I will be posting some things in the near future. I'm going to reorganize my notes so that it makes sense. So you can do eat this, don't eat that, and
Yeah. That would be
if you,
awesome.
if you have this in your house, throw it away. It's like, don't give it away,
Ugh.
throw it away,
Throw it
and
out.
never, ever, ever buy it again. I mean,
Don't
you
look
can,
back.
I always tell people if you're going to sin, sin well, but don't do it all the time. Yeah,
If you're gonna
and
sin well. I like that quote.
thank you very much. You can quote me on that one because we're all gonna the holidays come up. The average
Right.
person back in 1995, I read the stat, ate 2 pounds of sugar between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Oh wow.
That's a lot. There's
Yeah.
11, and when you're looking at the like soda pop. I'm from the Midwest. That's what we call it. And like Fago and things like ginger ale and
Oh
things like
yeah.
this. So, it has an average of 22 teaspoons per container of a 12-ounce can. No one eats that. You really got to
Yeah.
learn to like read labels and look at
Yeah.
ingredients and find out what the ingredients are. If you can't pronounce it, don't buy it.
Don't. That's a good.
Um,
That's a good philosophy too. Yeah.
yeah. And like in sweeteners, if you ever want to lose weight, don't use sweeteners. They don't, it's
Yeah.
just like actually interferes with how you digest your food. And it's a mixed
I can
message
believe that.
for the
Yeah.
brain. So it's not really good either. And, that sugar is really important since we're talking about that and how you think. There's
Yeah.
so many, with kids who have ADD, adults who have ADD, drop sugar out of your diet. You'll start thinking better. Just piece some really good foods together, and I have a whole array of ideas because it depends upon what I do. So personalized with one person is that I take a look at what's in their box. Like, what is it that they want to do? How do I get them from where they're at now so that they can feel better, they can think better, and they can move better. I say that so many times because that's the end result of eating really well, getting exercise, getting the appropriate amount of sleep. Because if you don't sleep enough, you can't think well either. You'll wake up foggy,
Right.
especially if you have interrupted sleep and you're waking up in your deep dream cycle, the third and
Right.
fourth cycle. Then you wake up, you're like, where am I? And oh my God, I got to
Yeah.
get to work and I got to get to this meeting. And you're trying to figure out how to piece that all in, which makes you stay in a Newtonian time scale where you're going 12 o'clock, 12:15, 12:30, 12:45, 1 o'clock. And
Oh,
you
I
stay
see.
in that, which makes your day feel like you're going against the grain, as opposed to going,
Yes.
okay, it's 12 o'clock. I've got 5 more hours in my day. Here's the stuff that I know that I can do during that time that I need to do. What are my top 3 things I need to do today in order to get
Right.
past that? Right.
Wow.
It's very challenging sometimes, but I love the
Yeah.
challenge, and I like making sense of it and saying, well, if you did this, if you did these 3 things together, like if you take a walk in the morning to get your body in motion and thinking, it's healthy for your brain, it's healthy for detoxing. If you can get you to drink water to a certain specific amount that your body needs as opposed to somebody else's, then it's like, then you just keep on adding to like, it's like you make those things, you make them a ritual, and,
Right.
get out of the thing of like, I'm trying to do this new habit. I need a new health habit. I've heard that so many times in my career. It's just like, this is my health month. I wanted to strangle the person,
Right.
when they say that, because I'm thinking, why don't you make this something that's so normal that your new norm is you do it every day?
Wow.
And it's just
Yeah.
like, and doing something that when you're sitting well, is something that that's like icing to the cake,
Yeah. No. I mean, and thank you for clarifying that. And just to backtrack a little bit, you talked about missing, I guess you could say, missing nutrition in the American diet, especially in
Mhm.
light of
Yeah.
the European diet. And I think the numbers show Europeans are disproportionately
Oh, it just
American.
cut out again. Uh-huh.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. So my question was, what's missing in the American diet, especially in light of
Oh,
how healthy Europeans are compared to us? How are we in America missing the mark? What's lacking, so to say?
well, first off, in many countries in Europe, they don't allow glycophosphates in their to be sprayed on their vegetables and on their produce. So we have such an array of added chemicals that happen, in this state, in this, country. Pick a state.
Yes.
And so that's why organic is so important. So I have known that when I've gone to, my ex-husband is French. And so when we used to go to France, I would swear to God, I'd ate like sometimes like twice as much, and I would come back and I would be 8 pounds lighter. after being there for like 3 weeks. And,
Wow.
it wasn't, so it has to be what the quality of the food is, like how is
Yeah.
it farmed, and, getting more things fresh. We have a tendency to have an extra freezer, and put everything in that freezer so that we can, always have what we need, like
Right.
chicken, like I never go to Costco's because I don't buy that much chicken. I don't have space for it.
Right.
And I wouldn't buy it anyways because I wanted to make sure that my chickens from, is free range and that it was grown in a very highly, without any GMOs. Because when they eat it, you eat them. And so, and there's so many cows, like when you eat grass fed, as opposed to here, they just don't have those extra chemicals. If you look at a bottle of Heinz ketchup in the UK and a bottle of Heinz ketchup in the United States, it's
Right.
like, what are these other things doing in here? How come they can make it there with
Right.
less ingredients and have it taste just as great, as opposed to what's in the United States? That's why, when I go to Trader Joe's, that's one of my staples that I always
Yeah.
buy is their organic ketchup because it actually tastes like tomatoes.
It does. There's a
Yeah,
noticeable difference. I've had it too. It's pretty
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And I
I mean,
and I was. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
no, I was just saying that, it's just like that's if you want to know the reason why is because there's this, vast difference. I mean, they have like in my ex-mother-in-law used to always say, we went into a cheese shop one day, 365 cheese. She goes, there's one for every day of the year. And so, and they also eat in moderation too. So they might eat more, more food, but
Right.
it's also combined more correctly together. So you assimilate it better.
Wow. And would it be fair to say as well, perhaps higher quality food fills you up faster? Maybe, that's what it looks like to me. It seems like for what you may eat in whether it's, France or Germany, Spain or Portugal, it seems like you don't need to eat as much to
Well,
reach sort of satiation or fullness, so to say.
Well, I can tell you, I was in the UK for a month years ago, and I went up to Scotland, and I chose to get smoked salmon as opposed to getting, the bacon, the
Right.
razorback bacon kind of stuff. And I didn't eat things like beans, and so I had a hearty breakfast. I usually was not hungry until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I just had a light snack, and
Wow.
then I had dinner about 3 or 4 hours later. But if you eat correct foods and you put foods together correctly, you're satiated and you're not trying to like snack, you're not trying to,
Right.
and it also makes you, granted I was moving around a lot also, but I just wasn't hungry. I didn't think about sitting down and having lunch and then having dinner on the any of the days that I was there and
Yeah.
that but the food, the quality, I've always found the quality of food and how when you eat, is important too.
Wow.
It all kind of blended in together, which creates that Mediterranean style of, eating, because in the Mediterranean diet, it's not necessarily a specific diet. It's a style of eating. It's a style of eating
Right.
certain types of foods that pair very well together. And so
Yeah.
that's the difference because we eat stuff here, you go out and have a hamburger or something like that. And then you have French fries and then you have pecan pie. It doesn't go
Oof.
together. If you don't ever want to like not think very well, it's the perfect meal to have.
Yeah, you know what? I guess that goes to the notion of balance. Foods that go well together. And I have to say
Mhm.
this, just a personal, I guess, a personal point of view. Greek food is actually my favorite.
Yeah.
So when it comes to eating, as far as my go-to food, I actually personally like to tend to eat like Mediterranean food. And I can at least say this: there seems to be some sort of like harmony with the amount of vegetables, carbs,
Hmm.
and meat. Because like I could eat falafel, that will fill me up the entire day most of
Hmm.
the time. And
Hmm.
even if you I guess look at the meats that are used in gyros, I can eat far less of that and be full, but I could still eat a hamburger and French fries and still be hungry afterwards. So
Yeah,
it's very
it's
interesting.
it's the salt to the fat to the carbohydrate.
Very interesting.
That so because if they in certain foods, the FDA knows these brand companies know how to formulate their foods so they're going to eat a little bit more afterwards. So
Wow.
they really are causative of some chronic illnesses and disease in this country. for sure. I posted a post today that, about the government and the government, liking you or not liking you. And while I'm talking, I'm going to see if I can find it on my LinkedIn post today, because it talks about statistics about how people, and it's just a post, and I wrote a little bit about it, why I was doing that. So it's right here. So, one of the things, and I'll give the solutions for this also too while we're on air, it says that obesity kills 2.8 million per year, and heart disease kills 17.9 million per year, and diabetes kills 1.5 million per year. It says if the government really cared about you, they would have banned fast food, refined sugars, and industrialized oils a long time ago, but they didn't. So the thing about, these three diseases, which plague and are an epidemic in the United States especially, is that obesity, heart disease, and diabetes all have one thing in common, and that what they have in common is inflammation. And the other thing is that people who are obese are more likely to have heart disease and diabetes, and people who have diabetes are more likely to be obese and have heart disease. Also, right. And the thing is that 40% of the people, an interesting statistic is 40% of the people who have diabetes will more than likely, they estimate, to get, to be more exposed to having Alzheimer's. Wow. So if you don't have a healthy gut, because that brain axis, the gut-brain axis is important. If you don't have a healthy gut, then foods leach out before, and sometimes toxins, sometimes heavy metals, and sometimes pesticides and insecticides and things that or cleaning fluids and things like that you inhale in your house, like the the Glade air fresheners. So, like those things you should never have in your house. They're like, there's research showing that they actually link to cancer. And so it's important to, piece all those pieces of the puzzle together. Like, how do I get past all this? Like, because it's overwhelming. But it's been there have been, changes that the FDA has changed or mandated, recalls and things like that have been definitely driven by, the almighty buck, and who is the connection they have in the lobby that they have in DC. It's a sad fact, but it's really quite true. So you have to take control of your own, lifestyle, right? And one of the things is, in that post, what I just said, people can simply do is start by paying attention to your signs and symptoms. If you don't, then they become Grim Reaper syndrome. And test, don't guess. If you want to know something, you got to have your first plan of action, and you got to make that plan. And it's so good to have an accountability partner, a coach, or somebody who is a strategist in medicine to help you out, and then you adjust your sales. You got to adjust your sales based upon how your DNA is expressing itself in the environment. Wow. That's the way to make that big picture. Like, I'm not interested in becoming that statistic. Right. And so if you're not interested in becoming that statistic, there's, you've got to have a plan about, like, how am I going to do this? Because it's clear that we have to be accountable for our own health, because that whatever has been happening in the past hasn't worked. And we have seen that from people who've had so many comorbidities, especially with the coronavirus stuff.
Wow. Fascinating. And, you mentioned something earlier. So we're talking about sugars and ADHD, talking about diabetes and Alzheimer's. Is there a substantial, solid link between sugar and some kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as whether I'm using the right jargon or in terminology here, but is there a link between sugars and like neuroinflammation or even long-term neurodegeneration, so to say?
Well, sugar causes inflammation, Got it. And so if you're having, it isn't like you can't have it, but if you're going to have it, eat whole fruits and don't make fruits more important than vegetables.
Got it.
So it's like when someone tells you have to have 5 servings of vegetables and fruits, you should have like 4 servings of vegetables and 1 serving of fruit. And then very sparsely. And if you've ever had the diagnosis of a chronic illness or disease, especially cancer, cancer makes the insulin to something very funny, and what it does, it's not funny, haha, but what it does is it makes the cells replicate faster.
Oh,
So putting sugar in your system is like putting gasoline on a fire.
wow.
It's really, it's important to, pay attention to how those foods combine.
So is sugar like almost
What
like a
they're,
catalyst for those cancer cells,
it
effectively?
is.
Or,
It is.
got it.
I mean,
Wow.
there's research to support that, and when food is, that's why when I say, or when another functional medicine doctor, lifestyle medicine doctor says, or a strategist, nutritionist say, it's like when you're looking at that food is medicine, they mean it.
Right.
And the reason for that is because you control, not somebody else. You're behind the horse with the reins in your hand going forward. You're controlling what goes in your mouth, the quantity and the quality that goes in, so that you can piece the puzzles together so that you can have better outcomes.
Wow.
One of the things that I always did when I was in practice is I always ate pristine well. And when I was in acupuncture school, getting my master's and getting my doctorate in acupuncture, one of the things I always said, they go like, how do you get straight A's? I had straight A's until one test, and I graduated with a 3.98 or 6 or something
Wow.
like that. And I studied in Mandarin, all my formulas, in the
Wow.
Chinese. So, and I
That
did
is
this
not
after
easy by any stretch of the imagination.
and I did this after the age of 50. So, in order for me to stay so focused,
Right.
I really needed to eat really well,
Yeah.
and I practiced the 5 pillars of health, religiously: the diet, the exercise, the sleep, the positive mental attitude and positive mindset. I talk to
Yeah.
myself on the way taking an exam all the time, like, I am going to pass this test with flying colors. And a friend of mine, I picked her up on the way one time. She said, "You're crazy." I said, "I get my A, don't I?" And because I'm going in there saying, like, I already know the information. I studied it. I know it. I just need to calm down enough so I can
Right.
spill all that information back out on a piece of paper.
That is
And
awesome.
and then I got adjusted on a regular basis because structures function. The brain controls and coordinates all functions of the body. It goes down the spine. It goes out to every organ and tissue. If there's a misbalance and pressure on that spine, then what happens is those nerves go, eventually will have some type of malfunction. Because
Wow.
you can't have, even a piece of hair on on a nerve can interfere with how that nerve is communicating with
Oh
other
yeah.
nerves and other cells and that type of thing. It's very
Yeah.
fast.
And
It fits all
yes.
together. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have to say, before we get onto the second pillar, exercise, I have to say, I actually get acupuncture on a semi-regular basis, probably like every 2 to 3 weeks. And I will say this, um, there is a noticeable difference in clarity and just feeling overall in the body afterwards. I have to
Hmm.
say. So, especially you becoming an acupuncturist as well and mastering that, I think that is incredible, and that has to be like well over probably 800 years plus of essentially traditional Chinese medicine and science behind it, that's also kind of spilled into martial arts and all other different types of other ancient techniques as well. So I think that's absolutely incredible.
It is, actually the first needle was jade, and it
Wow.
was, and however that they measure that, it was measured as in BC as opposed to AD.
that
And
is
so
that is incredible.
they've been doing things, and they're really masters too. I did another seminar this weekend that talked about Chinese acupuncture in relationship to high fever, nausea, vomiting, respiratory diseases, and things like this, and specific formulas that are really incredible and that are impossible. Some of them are impossible to get here because of the stance of America wanting to control what herbal formulas are together or how
Right.
they're pieced together. For somebody who's got high blood pressure, you can't do mohang, which is it's like an ephedra type thing, and for people who have high blood pressure. So there's other formulas that you can give that don't preclude that you wouldn't give to someone like that.
Wow.
But it's they've been very successful, and there's research in China that has proven that specific formulas have been very useful and have reversed in a very short period of time, like, very typical flu type symptoms.
Wow, that's incredible. We should
Yeah.
perhaps have a separate episode on the benefits of acupuncture, I have to say. And I've been probably getting it for about 2 to 3 years.
Hmm.
And I have to say, it's the effects and difference that I felt before and after it's worlds apart, to say the very least. And I think it's also good to perhaps extrapolate and maybe get into the weeds about some of the science behind it, because I've also met people, professionally and otherwise, who some people really love it, and then I also meet others who are complete detractors and say, oh, they almost liken it to almost like a mysticism. And I've read a little bit about acupuncture. I'm like, no, there is a legit system and science behind this, and perhaps it didn't originally use modern terms. However, the knowledge of the nerve endings has been cultivated for a very, very long time, to say the very least.
Well, it's I understand why somebody might say that out of ignorance, but the
Right.
point is that Chinese have been doing something a long time. What the Chinese didn't have when they first started out is they didn't document. You came
Oh,
into
okay.
see a doctor of acupuncture in China, and they kind of say, like, what's wrong with you? You tell them. They look at your tongue, they take your pulse, they look at your skin, they
Right.
look at your face, they look at what you're telling them, and then they're looking at what points support and tonify that, because all the points on the body all actually connect. Each meridian connects to the next
Yeah, meridians.
meridian.
That's right.
And
Awesome.
so, and they talk to each other, and it's just like your cells in your body talk to each other. There's cellular communication from one to the next one to the next one. They happen, without, nobody ever really talks about it too much. They are in recent years for the
Right.
Western medicine, functional medicine aspect of it, traditional lifestyle, the whole thing. But
Right.
they know that. They just don't, they're calling it something different in Chinese medicine when they started out. Now they have a lot of white papers, and they have research that has been ongoing to make those statements that they're making, and they can show that, look at when Richard Nixon went to China and they did that surgery on the guy,
Right.
they just choose, this is what put it on the map in the United States, where people said maybe there's something to this.
Right.
And where they had stem, they put needles in, they put stem on, which blocked the pain while they did the operation, and the person had their recovery was superseded in anything that's seen in the United States. So then they started discovering that, and then it started spreading, and they got notoriety again.
That is awesome. We should definitely have a separate episode on holistic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. But anyway, moving on to the second pillar, exercise.
Exercise. Yeah.
Exercise.
So exercise, I always tell a story about, and I have posted about this also, is that my second patient ever in clinic, in chiropractic clinic, was this woman who was 92 years old. And I would tell you, if you ask me what her first name is right now, Grandma. Everyone called her Grandma, and when she came in, they go, Dr. Pat, Grandma's here, Dr. Pat, Grandma's here. And so I asked her when I was interviewing her, it's like, you're 92 years old. You've done a couple of things right to make it to 92 and have a full life. Why are you here today? And she said, well, Dr. Pat, with her so in school in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, Dr. Pat. And she said, I want to finish an Afghan. We got a new one coming. So we went through, you're 92 years old, you're female, you take high blood pressure meds. That was the only medication that she took. And I said, well, what do you do for exercise? And she said, well, neighborhood's turning. She goes, so I don't go down the street anymore. I'm not even imitating how Southern that woman was.
Right. So she had a very old school Southern draw, right? To say the least.
Old school Southern draw. And she said that she went out and she watered her garden. I said, wow. And I'm thinking, how big is your garden? Do you use a hose? And she goes, oh no. She goes, I use a Dixie cup. And she goes, I get my Dixie cup and I fill it out and I go out and I water my garden.
So she's just going back and forth with just little bits of water.
Well, think about this. I asked her how many plants she had. She goes, 150. So she went out in the backyard. I don't know how big the property was. She went out in the backyard and she went from watering back and forth every day so her plants could get enough water. And sometimes she did it twice a day. So what I loved about the story is that, she ended up with, I said, so I go, anything else you want to tell me? And she said, I sure do. I just want to let you know, if you don't move, you're going to die. She goes,
She's
and
absolutely
that's
right.
why I exercised the way that I did. And because it was so important to her to be there with her family. It was her driving, force. We all have our whys of why we do or
Right.
don't do something. And so, a lot of people, you don't need a lot of exercise, but you need to move. And one of the things I tell people who really they got to get out there, they have to get that endorphin surge, and that is
Right.
if you hate going to the gym and you don't want to run on a treadmill or be on a cross trainer or whatever, and you want to be outside, then what you do is you walk as fast as you can, as far as you can, for as long as you can.
Wow.
Simple,
Yeah.
or you move, so that you get your, 15 minutes a day. And if you're going to move, this is something you can do together, is that you can make sure that you have a fleshy part of your skin, if you're in at least warmer climate at the time, so that you get the sunshine on you, so that your vitamin D levels in your body go up. Because you
Right.
need those for a lot of functions. It's a hormone, and you need those for the function especially for your immune system.
That
So
is incredible. Yeah.
that's
Go on.
just a simple thing, like to do, like go out and walk. Like, how's that for a concept? But watch how fast you walk or how slow you walk, but don't walk any faster than what you have the capacity to do, because you don't want to have a fall,
Right.
and you don't want to set yourself up for failure. And a lot of people, when they go to exercise, they have a tendency to do it because they want to be the weekend warrior, or, and they go in someplace and then they end up not getting the results that they want, because they say, like, I can't exercise because it hurts. Well, as soon as you
Yeah.
feel hurt, rest, start to walk again, or do whatever you're doing. If it still hurts, stop. That's your cap. That's your cap for that day, and just keep on adding to it. Just start with the rule of one time around the block, one glass of water. Read one page in the morning. Meditate for 10 minutes. 1 minute. Just give it, send out a good thought. Call up that person. Make one call and call up that person who's on your mind, who you've never said, I appreciate you.
That's great. And it's funny. I feel like a lot of times, and I think I don't even throw myself in the category, maybe until recently. People look at working out as some sort of like duality, where you either work out well and work out hard, or nothing at all. So in my 20s, I used to be a competitive power lifter. So in my 20s, and obviously, and I'm 37 now, but in my 20s, I felt like, okay, I got to work out 2 hours. If it's not like a 2-hour workout, it's nothing. As time goes on, I think we have to appreciate volume. So now I'll do maybe 20, 30 minutes at a time, but I do that consistently over each day. Whereas I guess in my 20s, it's like, okay, it'd be 3 to 4 intense workouts per week, and then the rest of the time I was just kind of totally dead. Now it's like, okay, practically speaking, working out like that is not necessarily a great idea for a few reasons, time restrictions and other things. But I do feel like if you're working out in high volumes, even if it's just a little bit, I really feel the difference. And in fact, I think I actually work out smarter now, being older than
You're not that old.
I know, but I'm just, for context, context anyway. Because when I meet people, a lot of people feel the same way. If they're not doing an hour in the gym, if they're not doing something that's exhausting them, it's almost like they didn't do a workout. And not to give advice, but I do tell people, don't think of it as that. Don't look at this as a mountain. Doing consistent incremental work, it really does add up, I have to say.
Well, one of the things is that people punish themselves for no apparent reason. And
Right.
so, when when I was in chiropractic school in Atlanta, we used to walk around the Chattahoochee River. There was this running trail. And I would see, every once in a while, I would see somebody smiling, like where they're running, and
Right.
going like, hi, other times people look, they were like in the drudgery, they were, on their way going to hell or something. It's just like the
Right.
highway to hell. And, so it's just like, we got to stop punishing ourselves. It's okay to move,
Right.
and it's okay. It's like consistency is the most important thing, because if you don't move, you're going to die. And so you have to, do things that your body's made to. There was a doctor who was a Russian doctor who the United States wouldn't give him a degree in medicine. He was an MD in Russia, and he didn't want to go back through school all over again. And so he decided to do something that was a shorter schooling, which was the PT. But he brought his brilliance of being a medical sports doctor in with the PT thing together. And people have body types. There's some people who should never, ever do an exercise. I mean, I can remember working the Boston Marathon in the expo, where they had anybody who was in the marathon that people might see along the route, you had to be at this expo. And I can remember talking to this one guy, and I jokingly said, putting my foot in my mouth, "Hey, you running the marathon tomorrow?" And he said, "I am." He's the last person, based upon his mechanics. I mean, I said, I go, "Are you running with an assistant?" And he goes, "No, I'm just going to run the marathon." But he has a distortion. So if you take that distortion that you have, you keep on exercising that distortion, the distortion gets stronger. It doesn't get better. I mean, that makes that makes a lot of sense. But I had to I had to figure out how to get my foot out of my mouth very quickly on that one, and I said, "Well, at the very end, come over and see us in the medical tent, and I go for your triage, and say hello, and a lot of people did that. That was the 100th Boston Marathon that we worked for that. But it was a lot of fun to see these people. There's people who have, they have runners' bodies, as I call it. The Kenyan runners have runners' bodies. They do not have the body for someone to do weightlifting. So they might offset what they do to have more strength by doing some light weights. But you really got to design. People need a program that fits their body type and their goals. And it's got to vary. You have to have variation so that you increase strength, your strength and flexibility and endurance, especially endurance if you're going to do those types of programs like a marathon, half marathon, triathlon, things like that.
Right. And I will say it, and I know it sounds cliched, but listen to your body. Many fitness trainers have told me that over the years, and there is wisdom in it, I have to say. There are sometimes when I've done exercises or sports, I'm like, this plainly does not feel right for my body right now. I just don't feel any type of alignment. I'm not getting that feedback that I usually like getting from, other types of exercise. And then there's times where I do something like, okay, this feels perfect. This feels just right. I'm gonna keep doing this. So, yeah, I totally agree.
And you're in Einstein's time then, and you're in your groove.
I was gonna get to that soon. I was actually gonna get to that soon, actually. But before we get on to that, I wanted to ask you something. How does exercise turn back the clock? And the reason why I ask this: incidents of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, back problems. These things are becoming more and more common for working professionals in their 20s and 30s, which is something that did not exist per se 50 years ago, let's say. And then you have people who are in their 80s and 90s. And, for instance, Jack LaLanne, the famous bodybuilder. And unfortunately he died, recently, just a few years ago. Even in his 90s, doing incredible physical feats, literally swimming across lakes and rivers with weights tied to him. All different types of speed and strength and endurance physical feats. Well past 75, still doing it, still looked great. And even to an extent, Arnold Schwarzenegger, even in his mid-70s, he is still actively lifting, actively exercising. Does not have back problems, at least not from what I can see, or knee problems. So, but on the other hand, I've also met professionals in their 20s and 30s. They can't run. They really can't stretch. They can't really do much as far as exercise. So, from your background, how significant is exercise, especially when you see some of these kind of, in my opinion, super athletes, people, and by the way, this even applies to runners, whether in their 80s and 70s and even 90s, I've read, people still running miles a day, more athletic than people in their early and mid 20s, for instance? What's
They
the
eat, they eat like crap. For starters, it starts with your diet, right? The second
yeah?
thing that you mentioned is like, for posturing, like because the last, pillar of health is structure, function,
Hmm.
biomechanics and proper posture. If you don't, your body, when I'm sitting right now, my core is working to make sure that I am sitting up straight, you
Right.
know, and so you just changed your posture too. And
Yes.
so,
That's right. Let me
it's
check.
just like, oh, wait, let me check. Let me check.
Yeah.
We
Right.
forget.
Exactly. I want to make
I
sure I'm
mean,
not.
there isn't a
Yeah.
car seat that fits anybody unless you're really short. And because it always makes your head
Right.
tilt go forward. When you start having your head tilt forward, people who sit all day long, they're carrying a bowling ball at 10 degrees, which like,
Oh, that's a
11
good
pounds,
point.
right? Because your head weighs
Yeah.
approximately like 10, 11 pounds. It's like
Right.
when you go forward, you're constantly like this. So it's stretching the dura. Your body's got to it gets tired faster because it just can't hold bad posture. And
That is
so,
such a good
see,
point. Yeah.
so when somebody's like, we have all these young people who sometimes like overwork, they're working from home, they're not eating well, they're eating the things that are like, quicker. I did a webinar with 17-year-old junior achievement kids a year ago. That group of people asked better questions than some questions I've been on other panels. And, they
Right.
asked me like, well, I'm at school, where should I go eat? And I said,
Wow.
well,
Yeah.
I said, do you have a sweet peas? And this was like, oh, because all their friends are used to going to McDonald's or going to Burger King,
Right.
or something fast like that, or eating in the cafeteria. All those foods have a lot of salt, you
Yeah.
know, and so
Oh
you've
yeah.
got to take a
Yes.
look at
Cafeteria food. Yes.
well, you have to take a look at what the content is, right? And you have to
Yeah.
take a look at how much you slept. This summer, I worked in Massachusetts out of an office that I am a guest doctor in almost every summer for the last 10 years. And this kid came in who was this nerd in computers, and that he couldn't touch his knees. He couldn't bend over
Wow.
and touch his knees. That's how tight his muscles were. If you don't, he doesn't have a good prognosis for, being healthy 5 or 10 years from now on a physiological standpoint. And so
Wow.
people who your 20 and 30-year-olds, who are now showing heart disease, look at what they ate from when they were born.
Yeah.
Disease doesn't start yesterday. I mean, you have,
Right.
in my book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? A woman in my business group said, hey, I'm not sick, I'm not fat, I'm not tired. And I said to her, thank you so much. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, because if you're tired, but a lot of times
Right.
we just punch through, like if you're out partying with your friends
Sure.
and you're out in Las Vegas or something like that, 5 o'clock in the morning, you're like is when you're hitting the hay,
Right.
and but if you do that repetitiously, that melatonin levels, like, well, I can't sleep. I don't just digest my foods. I have bloating. I have pain. My back hurts. Well, your back hurts from the muscle to the liver, from the liver to the muscle. If your body's not detoxing, and that's what
Right.
the function of the liver is. You never detox the liver. What'll happen is that those toxins have got to go someplace.
Right.
And when when the liver gets overwhelmed, it stores them in blood, brain, bone, and fat. And
Ooh.
also the connection between how strong your ligaments are, it's a function of the liver to get those nutrition and that
Yeah.
nutrients out to the body, so the
Wow.
proper functions can happen. So,
Incredible.
excuse me. So, the 20, 30-year-olds, you got to go back in their diet. That's the first thing you got to take a look at. You got to go, hey, what's going on with you? What are
Right.
you doing? What are you eating? And, it's just like, 'cause a lot of times oh, well, it tastes good. Well, look at the ingredients. How much sodium is in there?
Yeah.
How much, and how much sugar is in there? Because sugar makes people weak. Sugar makes a muscle
Sluggish.
weak.
Yeah.
When I had people who are elite athletes or people who came in with muscular or skeletal problems, I
Yeah.
said, you want to be in this office? You don't eat sugar, because if you
Absolutely.
eat sugar when you have pain, it is an inflammatory. It will make you hurt a lot more. So if you want to
That's
have
good to
that
know.
process, if you want that process to go a lot faster, when you're in pain or you injure yourself, do not put sugar past your mouth.
Wow. Good to know, everybody. Do not eat sugar, especially while you are in pain. That actually
Shouldn't eat
does
sugar,
make a
period.
lot. Yeah, right. And you know what?
How many
You
times do I have to say
right.
that?
Yeah. I will say this. As time goes on, anecdotally, I felt that sugar did make me feel sluggish. So I felt myself with these kind of energy spikes where um, I would have bursts of energy and then I would be exhausted faster and exhausted for longer. So as time went on anyway, I really took most of the sugar out of my diet, and there is a much noticeable difference, I have to say. And, by the way, even things that pass themselves off as healthy have a tremendous amount of sugar in it. Your basic
Good
yogurt
point.
here in the US has 25 grams plus. And I'm even talking about some of the ones that don't have the fruit at the bottom, so to say. And I look at this now, I'm like, that's a lot for something that's probably this size. It's incredible.
Well, what you really do is you should buy yogurt plain,
I
and
do,
my
yes.
favorite yogurt is from Iceland, and because it has the consistency of sour cream, and
Yes.
and I use it on like, sweet potatoes, and, and then you have to look at, when you do that, you can buy fruit, and then cook it down so it's a compote, and use that compote in your yogurt if you need to do it, but you've got to
Right.
balance it off because you have protein, fat, and carbohydrate. So you have to know what the fat is that you have to put in there to make it up so that a rounded protein with the right amount of carbohydrates and right amount of fat and the right amount of what am I at? Carbohydrates, sugar, and protein,
Carbs and
fat.
sugar. Yeah,
But
protein, fat.
yes,
Yes.
the whole thing. I
The
just
whole
lost that
thing.
one
Yeah.
train of thought. It's just like I
No, no
need to eat
worries.
lunch.
Now you
you
threw this
know.
term out there before. What is Einstein time?
Oh, I
Or
love
Einstein's time, rather.
Einstein's time.
Yes.
Einstein's time is, he thought that time was an illusion. And Newtonian time is when you're looking at a clock, as we know, the 12-hour clock, 24-hour clock in the day.
Right.
And so when you pay attention to Newtonian time, you can look at the clock and you're going, oh my God, it doesn't seem like either time is like, if you're really involved in something, and you're spinning your wheels, I say, get up, walk outside, go hug a tree and come back
Right.
in, but Newtonian time, you're counting the minutes. And
I
in
see.
Einstein's time, he said it's an illusion, so that when you get into your groove, what I call it,
Right.
or your vibe, or your
Yes.
vortex, whatever woo thing you want to call it, then you're in sync. Your body's in sync, your mind's in sync with with your energy field around you, because everything is frequency.
That's
And
awesome.
and then, so in Einstein's time, you're more creative. You have less stress, and you can get into that time, very easily, if you have the 5 pillars of health. It's super easy to do that. And I
Right.
teach people how to do that. And it's like so simple. They're like, wow, that's all there was to it. And I said, like, how come I didn't know that before? And I said, because you didn't do the 5 pillars of health. But
And let's go on to the third one.
Oh, the
Yes.
third one, my favorite.
Yes.
Actually, it's not my favorite. It's like I always say that, the sleep portion of that is, there's 4 stages of sleep, then you have REMs. So the first and second stage is when you're starting to fall asleep. That's when you're out laying in bed. You're kind of thinking like, oh, I'm like, just before you fall asleep, there's always that kind of like fuzzy feeling, and
Right.
you realize that your body's in a really good position, and you're comfortable. You got good support. There's no lights on in your room. There's no,
Right.
your telephone's on airplane mode, and you don't have any other electromagnetic energy things going on.
Right.
So that's when you fall asleep. Then you get into the third and fourth stage of sleep, which is your deep sleep, and that's where magic happens. You have the brain detoxifies, you repair, you revitalize, you restore. All the hormones get restabilized, they get resorted back out to go into the next day. That is usually between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Also between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning is when melatonin starts to surge, but it doesn't surge unless you're in a dark environment. It's I call it a dark hormone that is
Wow.
responding to, because if you have light, it's not necessarily going to come on. And so taking melatonin might offset another chemical in your body that needs to be there, and so that when you start to come out
Wow.
of that. So the cycle is all like 90 minutes to 110-minute cycles. And then
That
you
makes a lot of sense. Yes.
so then you REM, and that's where you dream. And when you dream, your body becomes paralyzed, because and your activity in your body, which goes down in the first two stages and is at its lowest 3 and 4, and
Right.
REM, it starts to come back up because you can act out your dreams. And the reason why you get paralyzed is so you don't sock the person who's next to you,
Right.
or injure or hurt yourself.
Right.
So the one thing that helps people really get into any of these stages and standing stages is hydration. You have to have a lot of hydration, and it's good for everything. The diet, the exercise, the sleep. So the
Right.
cool part about sleep, is that when you set your stages up, like I always have. Here's a great hack: when people can't go to sleep, I always ask yourself, okay, what's bothering me? Is there anything I can do about it right now, this very minute?
Right.
And if so, get up and do it. If you can't, just like dictate into your telephone, blah, blah, blah. Adam English, I have this, appointment with him tomorrow at 11:30. I'm thinking I need to talk about this. I got to go find this article or whatever it is. You can find it in the morning. It's not going to go away.
Right.
Things don't change that fast overnight, generally
Right.
speaking. Right. And so that's the biggest thing, about like doing it. And then saying the affirmation, like after you get done doing it, just tell yourself it's okay to go to sleep. I mean, start learning to talk to yourself at the time when your lizard brain is not going to interrupt you. And that's something that, when you're trying to be successful, and going into the fourth pillar of health, which is positive mental attitude plus positive mindset equals success. That's how I say it. And the reason
Right.
for that is because when you are in that mode, when you are in that positivity, you have a lot of, bigger bandwidth if something or crap hits the fan and you got to go deal with it. And so in that mode of being in the positive mindset and positive mental attitude, if you have that, you can automatically, your like success rate for diet and nutrition and exercise and sleep soars, because you've got all the pieces of the puzzle together, and like, I can, I will, I must. And then learning to take those affirmations that you say. A really good point is that the lizard brain, is the one that tells you to do, like, you can't do it. You're never going to do it. You're not good
Right.
enough. And then he's usually pretty active anytime during the daytime because it's something that's automatic. That's where the saber-tooth tiger comes out and protects you. He
Right.
goes, oh my God, duck, kind of thing.
Right.
Slam on the brakes. And the second brain, which is the mammalian brain, ties emotions in with your memory. So if you have a bad experience, he plays off of like, you had a bad experience, so you shouldn't do that again. Like, why would you go get another degree?
I see. Yes.
That's stupid. But if you go, oh, if I get another degree, and I become a chiropractor, I'm going to use me for example, then I can help sick people get well people to maintain their wellness. How cool is
Right.
that? That's a good vibe. I can take that emotion and I can run with it all day long.
Wow.
And when I think and so when the lizard brain's chatting too much, I kick him off. And then I think of something that's positive that ties in emotion, like the movie that we all watch at this time of year, right? Love Actually starts off with people coming out of the, when they're coming off the planes and they're meeting the meet and greet place. And
Right.
People are never sad. They're happy. So that anchors that emotion for the rest of that movie. Whatever happens in that movie, and they return to it at the very end. Where they started, where they end, where people came in and they're still happy.
Yes. I remember
So
that.
if you can anchor those emotions, it's really important. So that's why you say your affirmations in conscious thinking brain time, and that's when you're up. You say them when you first get up, and you say them at night. You'll be more successful. I am healthy, vital, active, successful human being. I will.
Awesome.
I am. And those things created together gives you the perfect, tools that you need in business and also in your personal life.
That's incredible. So effectively, we can really reprogram our subconsciousness to really have a tendency to emit more positive messages through really conscious self-affirmations.
Absolutely. And you can listen to them during the daytime. if like, for people either learn by what they see, what they feel, or
Right.
what they hear. So, it's best to to do your affirmations where you're saying it out loud, where you're taking a shower or someplace that you like to be,
Right.
and say them out loud, say them clear, whatever that song is,
Right.
and then you say them in the morning, you say them at night. If you're pretty soon, the conscious brain talks to the mammalian brain, and those positive feelings that you're having from the conscious brain saying those affirmations, the mammalian brain helps them become a reality and quells the lizard brain.
What about I guess you could say, what is the susceptibility, I guess you could say, of the subconscious? Let's say if you're listening to these affirmations as you sleep. There's always I always hear these anecdotes from people how they listen to audiobooks when they sleep in order to like learn subject matter or to cram for an exam or study for an exam. Does that actually work? So for instance, if you actually have some sort of like positive affirmation recording and you have it on and you fall asleep to that, does that actually work?
Only if you stay in the first two stages.
Okay, got it.
Remember, there's 4 stages, and
Right.
when you're in deep sleep, most people, like if you wake up in deep sleep, you're like, well, where am I? We all
Right.
walk like taking a nap, and then we wake up and think like, oh my God. Or if you can't sleep at night and you finally go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning to go to work, and you're waking up in that deep level of sleep, you're going to be foggy.
Got it.
And the other thing that adds into foggy brain stuff is sugar.
Yes.
Got to go back to diet.
Right, and it all does.
Mm-hmm.
To say the very least. So the third pillar being sleep, the importance of sleep, hitting every stage, getting complete sleep as well. So moving on to the fourth pillar now.
Well, we talked about that. We talked about positive mindset, positive
mindset. Yes.
And in equals
I
success. But what is there something specific that you would like me to like really
I want to know if
dive
there is
deep
any
in?
other type of wisdom you wanted to elaborate on or touch on.
Well,
otherwise we can move on.
Well, we can move, not move on, but as far as the mindset goes, if you want to, I think the most important thing is to identify toxic people. People who make you, who are always undermining you, who might talk behind your back, blah, blah, blah. You don't know it. There's like, it's a toxic person when you pick your phone up, and you look at the person and go, and you just put your telephone back down, and you got time to talk. As when you get done, you want to go take a shower. I mean, there's, and so those things are, I think we need to identify who toxic people are, the people who, tell you can't do it. They want to take your dream and they want to just trash it. They're jealous of you. They're envious of you. Yeah. And I think, we need to limit our time, because a lot of those people sometimes have a tendency to be family. And so we need to limit our time or what we're willing to hear, and learn to say things when someone comes up and says something like that. It's like, thanks. I go, thanks. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thanks for sharing, and just change the topic, So I think we have to be more mindful of who toxic people are in our life and why they take because if you're on a toxic person, you're going to want to come home. You're exhausted.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's true. Everyone knows that. I mean, like when you're around certain people, I mean, it's just like when I went home for like family functions, sometimes I chose which relative I sat next to.
Right.
The whole time. My Uncle Bob was a lot of fun. So was my Uncle Don. But the rest of them, I just kind of like, it's nice to see you. Kiss, hug.
Right.
I'm going to go get a beer.
And for you, and I know maybe this sounds, obvious though, but what tools or maybe tactics have you used to identify toxic people who are about to come in your life? I'm sure there has to be some sort of red flag that you could probably spot from miles away now dealing with toxic people, because it seems like it's not very obvious all the time. And in fact, it seems like toxic people can contribute to that negative dialogue that maybe your subconscious programs into, I guess, your conscious dialogue, so to say.
Well, anybody can be on their good behavior, for you know, that you meet on for anywhere up to like 90 days. And so, you know, I like that, you know, learning the new habit, that 21 90-day rule. I get
Right.
that 90-day rule kind of like, you know, free bandwidth, you know, and I think people sometimes can just be people and they make mistakes, you know, but you make a mistake twice, the same thing twice, you know, third time you're
Yeah.
not going to get a chance. I'm not going to have that. I will keep in contact, but I won't have that. I limit with my hands out. And I do a technique when someone's really bothering me,
Right.
in that regard. And I mean bothering me in a bad way, but I just think, you know, like when somebody has that heavy energy, I freeze
Right.
them. And I learned this technique from the spiritual leader of mine who, you know, described it, and I will describe it right here, is that when somebody's coming at me and I can feel that level of negativity, you can feel it. You feel like, you know, you want to go like back off, or you want to get off the phone, or when you're identifying it, you know, because people, you know, and then you just freeze them. You imagine, you know, them in an iceberg.
Right.
And then you push them, whichever hand feels best for you to do it in. Because some hands, like my right hand doesn't feel like that, but my left hand, I can push far. And, you know, and I just
Right.
see them like that. And then their perspective changes. And I also say, you know, like if somebody's not, who's being negative, I'll go, you do realize you're being negative right now, right? You know, and sometimes they laugh and they go, yeah, I just don't know how to get past it. You know, and because that's how they were, that's their role leaders did the same thing. And so
Right.
it takes effort, you know, and a lot of people don't always take that effort. And it's easy. You just have to have like something happen to like click into that lizard brain going, see, I told you so. And
Right.
you just have to stop and say, like, not now. You know, I don't have time. Not now.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, I take, you know, a lot of times I take space. You know, a lot of times I do the freeze technique, you know, and, you know, and I give people that bandwidth, like, you know, when I'm, you know, talking to them, but some people are just, you know, they're caustic from the moment that you start talking to them. And I just
Right.
get up, just like, nice talking to you, but I got to go. You know, I've
Right.
got to take my dog that's,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
outside, and I got to take a walk, that kind of thing. So I think that, you know, identify them is important. Um, and then, you know, being able to act on it, you know, and because you can't, if they make you feel guilty, you know, then you want to, you know, you have to think of that as part of that group of people.
Yeah. Well, I
They're
have to
pretty
say,
well
highlight.
identified.
Yeah, and by the way, I think 90 days is actually a very good number to, I guess you could see how somebody's telegraphing their next moves as an individual. And it seems like 90 days is a fair timeline to really see what you need to see about an individual as well.
Well, they say for dating it's 180.
Oh, is it? Okay.
You know, because 180
Makes
days,
sense too. Yeah.
people can be in good behavior. Then all of a sudden, like, you know, they get a little, they
And the
let some of their
veneer comes
guard
off.
down, you know, and like a car pulls in front of them and they're using vernacular that you're going like, wow. You know,
Right.
like, buddy, you're angry. You're not just mad, you're
Yeah,
angry. You know, and angry people, I don't want to put them in my energy because it sucks your
it does.
energy, you know.
It's almost
And
vampiric,
then,
so to say.
you know, when I would go out with my friends in Boston downtown when I still lived downtown, we would meet, and if they got into like what I would say, saying something about their boyfriend, that they're mad at him about this or whatever, I would look at my watch and go, hey,
Right.
3 minutes. 3 minutes
Right.
max, 2 minutes. And then I got down to 2 minutes, and I would just say, "Hey, why don't we talk about that some other time? Let's go. We're here to have
Yeah.
fun. We're here to have fun tonight." If it continued, 10 minutes later, I was out. I just said, "See you guys later," and we'll go down the street. And
Sounds
because
like a good strategy.
I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to contribute to that, you know. And you know, one time when I wasn't even there, someone's boyfriend called me up and just said, "You're turning my girlfriend against me." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he
Yeah.
told me the story about her coming home from a night that I didn't go meet them. And so I just said to him, I wasn't even there. I have no clue what you're talking about. And I said,
Right.
I go, talking to the wrong person. You should be talking to your girlfriend, you know,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
and that type of thing. But it happens though. It's just like we have, you know, we're conditioned to like, I think women, especially too, who I was like, oh, like reasonable doubt, I should give them another chance. I should give them another chance. How many chances do you have to give somebody?
Right.
Because they're already like, the spots on the tiger, it's leopard, that line goes,
Yeah.
spots on the leopard don't
That's what
change,
yeah.
and they don't,
Wow.
and also you have to take a look at like how people treat other people. I mean, that's a real
Yeah, that's
easy,
always a
simple,
very good litmus test.
yeah.
How people really interact with others, whether it's in public at restaurants or whether it's in their
Hmm.
professional settings. Those things are all very very good indicators of who you're dealing with. And I think you highlighted this greatly. Putting on your being on your best behavior. A lot of people can do that.
Hmm.
So it is good to kind of wait and see, so to say, when I think maybe really coming to maybe a conclusion or really just putting this person in the good box, so to say. you know Being on
Yeah.
your good behavior is something I think a lot of people can do. So I have to say, you very artfully went through these 5 pillars, and these 5 pillars are absolutely
I
yes.
want to say one more thing about the last thing, and this
Yes.
is just a really good lesson, is, my mentor's wife, and also a mentor of mine, also for quite a while, told me, it applies to everything. It's just like, all you got to do is just give somebody enough rope. If they're going to hang themselves, they're going to do it pretty
Absolutely.
quick. And it's usually
Yeah.
within 2 weeks. Instead of the 90 days, it's usually like
Right.
2 to 3 weeks that you see something. And like, and if you have that feeling, a guy who's the CEO in Boston used to work out in my gym in
Yeah.
downtown Boston. And he said, if it's a red flag, it's a red flag.
Right.
Bottom line, it's a red flag.
Bottom line, it's a red flag,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
And I was now kind of bringing this all together. You mentioned before, when it came to fast foods, you would think in a more reasonable society, most of these things should have been outlawed a long time ago. Like many
Hmm.
forms of our fast food, many of the sugars, trans fats, and products like margarine should have been outlawed a long time ago, especially in light of all the research and data that we have now. And I wanted to know what the opinion is, maybe just from a anecdotal point of view between other medical professionals and physicians, because looking at the outside, from where I am, being essentially a layperson in this subject matter, it almost makes it seem like there's a vested interest in keeping society, especially the way the economy has gone, especially with the types of lobbyists that really steer a lot of policy in the United States, and I'd imagine
Hmm. Oh,
elsewhere.
yeah.
For me, it really looks like, maybe there's some sort of underlying, maybe if not really sinister theme. And this is not to sound like conspiratorial or like some sort of conspiracy theory, but even if you look at the raw numbers, it almost looks like there is some sort of structure, whether intentionally or very negligently, to keep people dumber, keep people fatter, people unhealthier, and for people to have shorter lifespans. Like overall, I can't really say the 20s and the 30s age demographic is necessarily the healthiest by any stretch of the imagination anymore.
Well, you got to go back to their parents and what were their parents doing when they were growing up. Number one for those people. And, I wrote an article a long time ago called The Sick Model of Medicine. And, where, you got to take a look at, are Western medicine doctors really doing the wrong thing? Well, they can only do what they've been trained to do and
Right.
what they believe in. So when those doctors get fed up because they're not getting sick people well, they're keeping people in a level of sickness because whatever they're doing is not working. So you've got to start looking outside your box for those
Right.
other answers. And when you have, when you're looking at all those statistics that are skies, like they're climbing, they're not leveling up, they're not going
Right.
down, is that you've got to take a look at what's the first thing that you can do that you're in control of. And people have got to
Right.
get, when they're sick like that, when they're not thinking very well, they're compliant. There's complacency all over the place.
Right.
And so when you're complacent, if you don't use your voice, you're not visible and you're not valuable, then you don't have anybody to complain to about how your life turned out. The external
Right.
factors that either make you healthy or to promote your life or to get you some from one point to the other point. You have to be responsible and accountable
Absolutely.
for your own like actions. But if you take a collective look, I don't disagree with you. I think that it's, you got to follow the buck, you got to follow the money.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at big pharma lost money because a lot of people stopped taking the flu vaccine for like years. Their
Yeah.
stats started going down. Like look at like Monsanto still is making Roundup. Why is that? It's
Yeah,
carcinogenic.
that's
It's
right.
just like, and people are spraying it all over the place, and people have the exposure to it. One guy told me, who was spraying it one time when I was walking my dog, because I veered my dog across the street. I said, "What is that?" He said, "It's Roundup." It was down in Florida. I was down doing clinical rounds at a chiropractic college, and I said to him, "It's carcinogenic." He goes, "Well, only if you breathe it in." I said, "It's airborne."
Right.
I said,
It is.
you
Yes.
gotta be kidding me. And there's a stream over there. And are those two little girls your grandchildren that are just running in the grass where you just
Oh my.
sprayed? I went, I just looked at him. I said, you should throw that stuff out. You can use vinegar, Dawn, and something else. There's a recipe that doesn't have any toxicity to it, And I said, your exposure is huge. Don't you
Right.
understand that? And then if you like look at the environmental stuff is going to make how your body responds to your environment. It's going to be expressive of your DNA. And you go like, oh, well, it's in my family. Well, not everybody in your family has the same diseases.
Right.
Why is that? If it's so genetically inclined, why is that? And it's just like everybody expresses themselves based upon their exposure into their environment. So it's all about money, and it's
That's
just
what it
like,
seems like.
and there's sometimes like in DC, I used to live there. So sometimes in DC, what I witnessed were the interesting people who were connected to interesting people who ended up being in a different position because everyone
Right.
owes everybody favors in DC. And
Yeah.
when someone calls you on a favor that you owe, you don't say no.
Right. I could definitely imagine that. And speaking of Roundup, I have to say this too. Just last year, this was either at Lowe's or Home Depot, I saw Roundup still on the shelves. So,
Yeah.
what I'll do in the, spring and summer, I'll clean up my backyard and, do little projects and whatnot. I saw Roundup still on the shelves, and
Yeah,
it
it
was
still
super
is.
cheap. It was super cheap. And by the way, it was announced in this big placard, huge sale. It was probably like $2, $3 tops per bottle. And I'm
Get your
thinking to
cancer
myself,
here.
yeah, and I'm thinking to
Get more
myself, like,
exposure.
I'm like, this is well known. Like, this gives you cancer. And in fact, every now and then, if you check your mail, you'll get those little postcards that essentially announce certain class action lawsuits. The Roundup
Mhm.
one is one of the more common ones that have gone out. If you have used Roundup, if you have been affected by Roundup, please, provide your information and whatnot. And I'm thinking
If
to
you've
myself,
eaten
people still buying this shit.
Cheerios,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
anything brown, anything
Actually,
that's
yeah,
going out of the ground, because they spray, to get rid of insects. But they spray a couple of weeks before they harvest.
right,
And the parts per billion and Roundup on Cheerios and cereal that your kids walk around and eat by their hand.
right,
I am so motivated when I see somebody feeding their kids Cheerios that I go up, introduce myself, and just say, you can take this for what it's worth, but you're feeding your kid glycophosphates Roundup. Really? People just don't know,
yeah,
and so and this one woman one time just picked the bag of Cheerios up, even though her kid was starting to cry, and threw them in the trash. She goes, we're never eating those again. Don't eat anything brown
right.
in the morning.
Wow. Yeah, and
Wheat, rye, barley, it's on everything.
yeah, and considering the fact of now that we have the luxury of maybe having more access to data to know these things, I would imagine people would want to act on that a little bit more,
Hmm.
especially things like Roundup, which is so public, the effects and damage that it does in the environment,
Hodgkins.
and yeah, Hodgkins, right? Yeah,
Yep.
all those things I would imagine. And you know what's a better alternative than using Roundup? You want to get rid of weeds? Use a sickle. Use your weed whacker. You're outside, burn a few more calories, get a little bit more exercise.
Oh,
That's what I do. Seriously, it's I don't Roundup. A lot of people, and I've seen other people use it on their lawn. Yes, it apparently kills weeds very quickly, but it really seems like this is a very very short-sighted take in perspective for something that is really going to just damage everything in your life very very long term, to say the least.
yeah, that a lot of those insidious type of things that they put out, but and for bomb, and people are like trying to get rid of roaches and things like
Right,
this.
yeah.
There's a whole slew of them, and there's only one product that I know that actually passes the gut barrier and goes into the cell membrane and past it, that collects those heavy toxins out of your body. And so if people would like to know what that product is, because they should take it as a nutritional supplement. Everybody in the United States has been exposed to heavy metal.
Absolutely.
And that's a
Yes.
statistic.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I would imagine even plastics, for all the stuff that's dumped in the ocean as well, like probably a lot of the fish that we eat probably have large amounts of these
Mercury.
plastic and mercury as well
Yeah.
that we
Hmm.
get into our system. In fact, I was reading an article that I think maybe the average human nowadays digests about like something like 5 pounds of plastic every year from all the food that we eat. Like
Hmm.
that's incredible.
It is incredible, and it's just like and like even your water, like, the recipe for water is 50% of your body weight in ounces. So if you
Yeah.
weigh 100 pounds, you would drink 50 ounces of water a day. To make that water work better for you, always put a little bit of lemon juice and use citrus,
Yeah.
in water, because the uptake of minerals, because that's where people really are lacking those enzymes to help you break down your foods correctly in the intestinal tract anyway. So, and the idea is to get those things out of your body. So if the liver dumps them back into your intestinal tract, or they send it to the kidney, to the bladder, to get eliminated that way, because the molecule is small enough,
Wow.
that's what's supposed to happen. But a lot of times people's guts are damaged from all the like the plastics and the other things that are in the environment that we eat. So you've got to be really,
Wow.
you got to do your homework and your investigation, so that what and
Yeah.
and then get the things out of your house. Throw them away. They're not useful to anybody.
Right.
And then clean out. I've gone to people's houses and helped them do that.
Wow.
And I'll always find something that they hide, and I'll
Yeah.
pick it up and go like, well, what about this? Let's read the ingredients. And they're going, Dr. Pat, you're tormenting me. And I said, no, let's read the ingredients. Get your computer out. Let's look this one up, and I go, here's a word that I don't even know. And then, but what you do is you look at not what it is, but what the side effects are.
Mm.
Because it's easy to find out what it is. And they're going, well, that's
Right.
what it is. Well, how is it Is it harmful? And there's an app that I don't know if it's still around or not, but I used to use it quite a while ago. It's called Think Dirty. And Think Dirty gives you a list of all the toxic things that are in products. So what they do, as they look for donations, if it's not on their list, you take a picture, send it to them. But in the interim, you can also just, do your homework and, use Google for a good purpose,
Right. Yeah.
to improve your health and that. So, but
Wow.
that's pretty much this. It's like you've got to take a look at, all pieces of the puzzle. And there's so much, wash fruit and vegetables, how they're stored. A lot of times there's accumulation of mold. You don't want to
Yeah.
eat mold,
No.
not like, and like in coffee, there's nothing wrong with having coffee. The problem with coffee is the mold and the
Oh
chemicals that
yes.
it's treated with. So,
Right.
buying some products that you have an investment in, into your health, it's just like, what can I do today? I can drink more water, I can buy organic, and and I can do some research on some of the things, I have, because a lot of people don't realize that they're eating, food that has like mold on it. So it's really, really important to do
Oh
things like
yeah.
that. And cider vinegar is always like a good thing or
Oh
vinegar
yeah.
is a
Yeah.
good cleaner, for even in your laundry. I mean, it
Yeah.
works for sure.
Yeah. It really does. And I have to say, my last question is this: what vitamins do we need more of that will perhaps close that gap? I guess as far as the average person's nutrition deficit. so to
Well,
say?
I say the basics are you need to get a phytomulti, so a good solid vitamin. You need to take zinc. You need to take D3, especially during winter months where you don't have so much sunlight. Um, you need to take fish oil. And so that would be like the top four. And then if you could take something to help tonify how the liver does its job, so it's easier to do its job of
Right.
detoxification, so things get out of your body and
Right.
don't get stored in blood, brain, bone, or fat, which we know that's not a good thing. That
Yeah.
would be a perfect thing to do. So I have a list of, that would be my top list. I think, and then that covers the basics, and then you can go from there. There's like
Right.
targeted supplementation that you would do for certain, situations, like if, someone has a cold or a flu coming on,
Right.
I tell people to gargle, just take the cap of cider vinegar and throw it in the back of the throat for 30 seconds. And
It's a good
then
idea.
it's just like it kills anything in the back, and never
Right.
goes down your throat. Because the problem
Right.
is not that it's there. The problem is if it goes in the body. And you
Right.
know that is internal when the color of the mucus is changed to like yellow, icky, green, gray. It's those types of things. We know that that's, deeper in the lungs at that time.
Right.
And, so water, 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 water everywhere. you know.
Right. Well, listen, Dr. Boulogne, thank you so much for coming on today. This was extremely enlightening. I think
Uh,
for this tech and blockchain boom to really continue, we can't just keep our heads in the books all the time. We really need to self engineer, self diagnose in many ways, and really self repair our bodies.
mhm,
So essentially, so we have a day, a week, a month, or a year where we can at least almost on call bring up, activate that Einstein time so we can really maximize our own capabilities based on how we've taken care of our body. Because I think that's really the best, you could say, window of time to learn and do things. When you kind of hit that Einstein time where you're in this deep, relaxed, constant focus,
mhm,
whether it's studying, whether it's doing something active with your hands. I think anybody who's been there, and I think many of us have, you really do feel like you're on sixth gear and you're cruising and you're coasting and there's no traffic. So
mhm,
I would say anybody in blockchain, in tech, in cryptocurrency, learning the subject matter is essential. But you know what? Your health is just as essential. And I would say to anybody as well, this is on my own personal Christmas list now. Check out Dr. Boulogne's book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Find out now. I will have to say, it's always good to come across a good book, especially in this day and age. And I don't think too much blue light shooting into our brains all the time is necessarily a great idea as well. And if for people that enjoyed this episode, I can imagine, especially from what I know about Dr. Boulogne and some of her research materials, this book will probably be even more enlightening as far as getting into the weeds about all of this. So, Dr. Boulogne, again, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm looking forward to having you come on again in a few months, talk about more of the subject matter, and even
Thank
talk more
you.
about acupuncture as well.
Good. Thank you very much. And when you're doing all your techie people, make sure you're wearing your yellow glasses,
Right.
for the
Oh,
blue light, because
blue
that
light glasses.
it has a problem. It won't interfere with your limbic system and how it works. So it's just like it helps you soothe your eyes for driving, for, anything that you do like that. That would be a very important thing to do, and it will also help you get to sleep faster.
That is awesome. And you know what? I should really be wearing my blue light glasses as well. So thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Again, Dr. Boulogne, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I really love to have an opportunity to be here, and I love sharing. I hope to hear from your people, and I hope to come back shortly. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Will do.
Yeah,
And we'll make it happen too.
wonderful. Bye.
All right. And take care.